And 24 candidates filed the necessary paperwork to appear on the Republican primary ballot here in New Hampshire. But bottom line, the majority of those votes are going to go to former President Trump and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. But the question remains, which of those two campaigns benefits the most from Ron DeSantis dropping out?
Breaking news from the White House regarding Ukraine. Want to go straight to NBC's Brie Jackson, who's standing by for us there. Brie, if you will, walk us through what we're hearing this hour.
Good afternoon. So what we do know is that President Biden invited President Zelensky to the White House for a meeting Tuesday. So far, no word yet if he has accepted that invitation. The White House says the president wants to underscore his administration's commitment to supporting the people of Ukraine as they defend themselves against Russia's attacks. It's that sense of anxiety that the city does have, because they said they are preparing for the unknown. They don't know how many migrants will end up here, and they don't know how much of the resources they're going to need to address that issue. But the mayor put it flatly that the end of Title 42 is just the beginning. We're outside the Fulton County Jail, and we do know that David Schaefer and Kathleen Latham, they are two of former President Trump's 18 co-defendants, and they turned themselves in early this morning. So they've been booked and processed, and that is the same process we expect the former president to go through when he turns himself in. Friday's meeting was significant on many levels. It marked the first time that President Biden hosted foreign leaders at Camp David, sending a strong message about the importance of the trilateral summit. While both Japan and South Korea are strong individual allies of the U.S., they have a long history of disputes with each other. That they're planning to have this area surrounding the jail in a hard lockdown when former President Trump comes here to the Fulton County Jail to be processed and have his mugshot taken, which is something different than what we've seen in the 3 other criminal cases that he faces. Nearly 3 years after former President Trump's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol, our country continues to heal. Former D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanone sustained life-threatening injuries that day.
My concern is that too many Americans don't recognize the significance of January 6th.
Republican presidential candidates were asked about the lessons the country learned.
You know, I don't think it was supposed to be, that was not supposed to happen. I think people went to protest, and I think it got out of hand.
I think that we owe it, all of us, to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Going into what is going to be a divisive 2024 election cycle, what do you think the most important thing someone like a President Biden can do?
Fight like hell. To me, the only issue that matters is securing the future of our democracy.
President Biden using an historic backdrop, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, where soldiers fought in the Revolutionary War, to deliver his first major re-election campaign speech of the year.
January 6th, a date forever shared in our memory because it was on that day that we nearly lost America, lost it all. Today, we're here to answer the most important of questions. Is democracy still America's sacred cause?
Fanone, who was on the front lines at the U.S. Capitol, has this message.
Well, I'm not a politician. I'm just an average American, and I'm telling you that this is the most significant election of my lifetime.
An unforgettable moment in 2021, now playing a key role in the 2024 presidential election. Across the country, black women are a key voting bloc. The same goes for here in South Carolina. I sat down with a group of women in Charleston to have an open conversation about the 2024 election. Charleston, South Carolina, known for its rich history, culture, picturesque streets, and politics. Just by a show of hands, who's excited for the 2024 election?
Excited.
We gathered this group of black women voters ahead of the state's Republican presidential primary. Their backgrounds, ages, and political views vary, but we found many of the same issues drive them to the polls.
Women's maternal health. Someone my age may not have the same rights in terms of reproductive health that a generation before me had.
Also top of mind, crime, student loan debt, and state efforts to ban books.
As an African-American literature professor, that is something that is very concerning.
There are concerns about the overall political climate.
It's divisiveness, it's opposition, it's social issues being politicized.
Despite dividing his time between the courtroom and the campaign trail, former President Trump leads the state's former governor, Nikki Haley, by double digits.
I am more so dismayed with the fact that in the year 2024, we would even consider someone who is under indictment.
At 81 years old, President Biden also faces challenges.
His age is a huge barrier.
Black women, a key voting bloc, but far from a monolith. Each one here voicing their own views.
Table discussions like this, where we are comfortable and able to speak in layman's terms, to bring up issues, to get a little bit messy around the topics.
A conversation turning to action this election cycle.
We got to vote. We have to vote.
Rising sea levels and storm surges are posing major challenges for the Gullah Geechee Nation. This community of slave descendants has thrived as a coastal society for centuries along the South Carolina coast. Their heritage and lifestyle are now at risk because of climate change. NBC News correspondent Brie Jackson has a look at the efforts to save their culture.
God's quite trouble in water. You can see how the little ripples and things like that going like that.
Water, essential to all, but even more precious for Gullah Geechee communities, working to maintain their distinct way of life away from the mainland.
That allowed our Africanisms, as others call it, to continue to evolve here in this land, but to also amalgamate into this unique Gullah Geechee culture. And so we say we the Vinya, we the Guayna, we Toto.
We traveled to St. Helena, South Carolina to meet Queen Quet, chiefess of the Gullah Geechee Nation. Descendants of slaves, they're known for their unique language and traditions like basket weaving. For decades, they've retained their culture despite the landscape around them changing.
The movement of the Gullah Geechee as part of the Great Migration brought culinary traditions, food traditions, spiritual traditions to the rest of the United States.
Before, the issue was bridges coming in and bringing people in who were overbuilding and displacing us.
Now, one of the biggest concerns is climate change. Increased storm surge and rising sea levels threaten their land and lifestyle.
That causes more flooding. It's causing saltwater inundation in places that were freshwater areas, which also impacts some people's farming ability.
Queen Quet tells me rising temperatures are also taking a toll.
Our oysters we won't have, nor will we have shrimp or crabs if the ocean acidifies.
I'm Geechee. I grew up eating crabs. There's a lot of crabs on the table throughout my life.
Tia Clark runs a business in Charleston, South Carolina, focused on catching blue crabs, a key ingredient in Gullah Geechee cuisine.
It has changed my life and put me in this place to come outside every day and share my culture.
Clark says the water brings her closer to her culture, but she's seen conditions for the wildlife decline.
With climate change, if it stays this warm, then the crabs are around, which means there's going to be a lot of pressure put on them by me and other people that are trying to catch them.
To help, conservationists are building oyster reefs to create a habitat for sea creatures to survive.
Look at where that line is from here for how this reef is protecting the grass. When we start losing some of these resources and when it really starts hitting home and affecting more people is when some real change is going to happen.
This is an effort to ensure survival.
Absolutely. Every part of what we're doing is to ensure our survival as Native Gullah Geechees and the survival of our tradition.
A fight against climate change to preserve their way of life. In South Carolina, Brie Jackson, NBC News.